Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the darkness of an ancient forest, a place so deep, so untamed, that even maps refuse to acknowledge it. The air is thick with pine sap and the whisper of unseen wings, and somewhere out there, a child is being carried through the night by an old woman whose eyes glow like river stones. You probably won't survive this one, but don't worry, you won't need to. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You awaken in motion, jolted, confused, the forest around you, a blur of black and silver. A rough wool cloak brushes your cheek. The woman carrying you moves like she's part of the night itself. You hear her breath, steady and controlled, even as branches claw at her arms. You're too young to speak, but you sense the wildness pressing in. The old woman mutters, in a language you don't know, something old, Slavic maybe, shaped by frost and folklore. You catch one word that she repeats often, bezbe. It means safety. You don't feel safe. When dawn leaks into the trees, she finally stops. The forest smells alive, wet soil, crushed fern, the faint sweetness of mushrooms. The woman sets you down on a bed of moss. Her face is lined like a tree trunk, her hair a halo of white frizz. You were born in sin, she tells you, matter-of-factly, like someone naming the weather, but the forest will save you. She introduces herself only as Jerusha, and you don't have a name yet. Over the coming days, she feeds you boiled roots and honey scraped from hollow logs. No bread, no fire, no laughter, just survival. She tells you stories that sound more like warnings than bedtime tale stories, of cities that poison the soul, of people who forget how to listen to the wind. Historians still argue whether such hermits truly existed during those years before the Second World War, living completely off the land in Eastern Europe's vast Biowega forest. But here, under Jerusha's stern gaze, the forest is your world entire. You grow to recognize its rhythms. The chirp of a nuthatch marks morning. The deep, muffled hum of beetles beneath bark means rain is coming. Jerusha teaches you how to move silently, heel first, then toe, and how to tell poisonous berries from the ones that bleed purple sweetness. You learn to dig water from roots and to listen for wolves before they listen for you. Her methods are brutal, but strangely loving. She doesn't hug you, but she wraps you in skills, which is its own kind of embrace. One day, she hands you a shard of mirrors, small, cracked, barely reflective. You stare at your own dirt-streaked face. She says, "The mirror lies. The forest tells the truth." Later, when you find out mirrors were once banned by certain mystics who believed they trapped souls, you'll realize she wasn't joking. Jerusha never jokes. Still, she has her eccentricities. She insists you bow to certain trees and whisper thanks to them. When you ask why, she replies, "They have ears." You suspect she means it literally. Once, she stops mid-step and hisses, "Quiet." The forest listens. You think she's crazy until a hawk swoops low over your head, talons slicing the air where your voice had been a moment before. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe, like Jerusha says, the forest doesn't like noise. Years pass in that green cathedral. You grow stronger, taller, quieter. You know every hollow log, every bird call, every patch of edible moss. You also know Jerusha is hiding something. Sometimes she disappears for days, returning with food or strange trinket skeins, fabric, even a worn silver locket she buries without explanation. Once you find her weeping by a birch tree, muttering names. When you ask who they were, she says only, the ones who forgot how to listen. It's around your 12th winter when Jerusha begins teaching you languages polish. German, Yiddish, snatches of phrases repeated in her sharp, dry voice. Why, you ask? Frost smoking from your breath, so you can understand the enemy, she says. You don't know who the enemy is yet. She makes you practice walking through the snow without leaving prints, sleeping in trees to avoid wolves, and hiding beneath layers of pine needles when danger nears. You find the last lesson both terrifying and oddly thrilling. The forest becomes not just your home, but your armor. You begin to think that maybe Jerusha was right. Maybe you were meant to vanish here. One cold night, she wakes you. The moonlight catches her face, making her look more ghost than woman. Remember, she says, humans destroy what they fear. Never let them find you. Then she presses her hand to your forehead. It feels like a benediction or a curse. She dies not long after, curled up beside the roots of an ancient oak. You bury her in silence, marking the grave with 3 smooth stones. For the first time, you are alone. But strangely, the forest doesn't feel empty. The wind sighs through the branches, almost like her voice continuing on. You name yourself Yona, though you're not sure why. Maybe you heard it once. Maybe the trees whispered it. Either way, it fits. You're no longer a stolen child. You're something else entirely. A ghost raised by the woods, shaped by survival and solitude. And as you curl up that night beside the dying fire, a distant rumble reaches your ears, something metallic, unnatural. It doesn't belong to the forest. You don't know it yet, but that sound will change everything. Morning unfurls, like smoke through the trees. You wake to a world damp and silver, the air humming with the chatter of unseen creatures. The forest has its own clock. You can tell the time by the angle of light slanting through the pines, by how the mist curls around fallen logs. You stretch, your body lean and strong now, every muscle shaped by years of movement, not comfort. Jerusha's voice still lingers in your head. The forest gives, the forest takes. Listen, you listen. It speaks in rustles and sighs, in the faint scurry of a hare through underbrush. You have learned that every sound means something. A quick double tap of a woodpecker's beak means predators nearby. The absence of birdsong means worse. You move like vapor between the trees, stepping over roots as if they're sacred lines. Somewhere far off, a stream gurgles under ice, promising water and reflection. As you kneel to drink, you catch your face in the rippling surface. For a moment, you almost don't recognize yourself. You're not a child anymore. Your eyes have gone forest dark, your hair tangled and wild. You speak little, mostly to yourself, sometimes to the birds. If civilization were to stumble upon you now, it might call you feral. But you don't feel lost, you feel tuned, like the forest is an instrument and you're its only musician. Still, there are days when silence becomes too loud. You find yourself whispering questions to the wind. Why me, you ask? Why did she take me? The forest, ever cryptic, answers only with creaking branches. Historians still argue whether Jerusha's axe stealing a child from a German village before the war was a rebellion against human cruelty or just madness dressed as mercy. But here, in your quiet solitude, it feels like fate. Jerusha's lessons never fade. You recall how she once pointed to a trail of mushrooms and said, "They grow like families each, one connected underground." You didn't understand it then, but now you sense it everywhere, the web of roots beneath your feet, the constant, invisible conversation of living things. Modern scientists call it the Wood Wide Web, but you just call it communion. Sometimes, at dusk, you hear laughter that isn't yours. You've convinced yourself it's the forest playing tricks on your memory. But there's a deeper part of you that wonders if Jerusha's spirit walks among the pines. She always said the dead didn't vanish, they just changed address. You test the boundaries of your world more each day. You map the terrain by memory, marking landmarks with discrete carvings, a spiral on a birch for east, 2 slashes on a beach for home. You find animal dens and hidden clearings, mushrooms that glow faintly blue under the moonlight. Yes, bioluminescence is real, just ask any Polish mycologist. One night, you stumble upon an enormous tree whose trunk is split open like a wound. Inside, you find tiny bones and the remnants of feathers. You whisper a prayer, though you're not sure to whom. Jerusha's words echo again. Every creature dies, but nothing in the forest is wasted. You remember her once feeding you soup made from stinging nettles and saying, "Pain turns to nourishment when handled correctly." You'd laughed then, your one fleeting giggle, as she burned the lesson into you. Even now, you chuckle to yourself. "Pain soup," you mutter. 5 stars would recommend. Humor is scarce out here, but sometimes you need it just to stay human. Seasons blur. You count them not by calendars, but by flavors, the sweetness of wild berries in summer, the sharp tang of pine sap in winter. You've become a historian of smells. Smoke, however faint, means danger. Wet stone means storm. Freshly broken fern means you're not alone. And then one evening, as the sun melts into amber through the canopy, you spot footprints, human ones. You freeze. They're too large for you, too deep and too fresh. You crouch beside them, tracing the edges with your fingers. Whoever made them wears boots, not moccasins. Jerusha once said, "Boots mean cities. Cities mean trouble." You follow the prints at a distance, quiet as mist. They lead to a small clearing where someone to someone's have built a crude shelter of branches. You hide behind a tree and watch. The first figure is a man, his clothes ragged, face hollow. The second, they look terrified, starving. Their voices carry soft through the stillness, speaking in Yiddish. You only catch fragments. Soldiers, escape, forest. Your pulse races. You've never seen people like this before, not in years. You feel curiosity tugging at you, but also fear. Jerusha warned you that people bring ghosts, and yet, something in their exhaustion mirrors your own loneliness. You wait until nightfall before creeping closer. You leave food near their shelter roots, mushrooms, a flask of melted snow, and retreat. You don't stay to watch them find it, but when you return the next day, the food is gone. They've left you a gift in return, a single piece of bread, wrapped carefully in cloth. You stare at it, bewildered. Bread soft, fragrant, impossibly human. You break it in half, savoring the taste like a forgotten dream. It feels like eating sunlight. Over the next few weeks, you linger near their camp. You don't reveal yourself, but you start to learn their patterns. You hear the man whisper names, other people, perhaps dead. You see him trace a Star of David into the dirt and brush it away when the woman looks scared. You don't yet understand what they're fleeing from, but you sense it's something vast, something born far beyond these trees. And sometimes, when you watch them, you catch yourself wanting to speak. You even practice, quietly, under your breath. I can help. The words sound strange in your mouth, like a forgotten spell. But you say nothing, not yet. The forest holds its breath with you, because deep down you feel something is coming, something big enough to make even the forest tremble. Days stretch like threads of mist through the forest canopy, and you, Yona, as you now call yourself, begin to feel the weight of both freedom and isolation. The name sits lightly on your tongue, though it doesn't truly belong to you. You found it in a whisper, maybe in a dream, or maybe in the voice of a bird that perched above Jerusha's grave the morning after she died. It doesn't matter. The forest accepts the name, and that's enough. You've become something in between, neither wild animal nor civilized human. You can read tracks like scripture, sense a storm hours before it comes, and coax fire from damp wood with a patience few monks could match. Yet you also crave voices, laughter, the rhythm of another human heartbeat near yours. The refugees you've been watching from the shadows have stirred something old. Inside you, something dangerously close to belonging. Each day you move closer to them. You notice how the man's beard grows patchy and white, how the woman hums softly when she stirs her thin soup. Once, she lifts her face toward the sky and whispers a prayer you don't fully understand, but it vibrates with longing. You can feel it, like wind through the pines. You try to mimic their words later. Quietly, your accent rough but heartfelt. Baruch Atta. Something holy hides in the syllables, though you've never known religion beyond the worship of trees. Jerusha used to say, the divine doesn't live in walls, it hides in moss. You used to think she meant that literally. Now, you wonder if maybe she'd just lost faith in people. That night, you dream of a city, brick streets, smoke curling from chimneys, a child's laughter cut short by sirens. You wake gasping, clutching your chest, heart hammering as if you've fallen from a great height. You've never seen a city, not really, yet something deep inside you remembers it. Maybe Jerusha was right. Memory travels through blood like a secret river. Historians still argue whether the concept of ancestral memory is mystical nonsense or science in disguise. But lying there under a canopy of stars, you're convinced some truths don't need proof. You remember things you've never lived. You ache for people you've never met. You start leaving food for the refugees, more often small bundles of dried berries, mushrooms, even a rabbit once. In return, they leave trinkets, a copper button, a strip of fabric, half a candle. It becomes your strange forest barter, a language of kindness without words. But the forest doesn't like divided loyalties. One morning, you find boot prints, again heavier, deeper, marching in straight, military lines. Your pulse jolts. You've never seen such precision in human tracks. The refugee shelter lies dangerously close. You track the prints backward and find something worse. A blackened patch of earth where the moss has been torn away, and the faint smell of smoke and iron. Soldiers, maybe, or hunters of another kind. You return to your own camp and start packing instinct, pure and simple. But something stops you. Jerusha's voice again. Do not run from what the forest brings. You breathe out, slow and steady. Fine, you whisper, but this better not get me killed. That night, you circle the refugees' camp and finally step into the clearing. The woman screams, clutching the man's arm, but you lift your hands, palms open. Don't be afraid, you say, in halting polish. I live here. The man's eyes widen, Here, alone. You nod. The forest keeps me. He studies your wild hair, your patched clothes, the bow slung across your shoulder. Finally, he lowers his weapon, which is barely more than a stick. Then maybe, he says softly, the forest sent you. His name is Kayam. The woman, his sister, is Astera. They're Jews from a nearby village that no longer exists. You don't ask how or why. You can see the answer in their hollow faces. Instead, you bring them food and show them where the ground stays dry under the snow. You teach them how to collect rainwater and line their shelter with bark. In return, Kayim tells you stories about families hiding in basements, about trains that whistle in the night, about neighbors who turned away. You don't understand everything, but you understand enough. Humans are at war with each other again. When he mentions the word Nazi, you repeat it, tasting its ugliness. They kill us, Astera whispers, for being who we are. You glance around the forest, as though expecting Jerusha to emerge from behind a tree and scold you for listening. But the forest stays still, waiting. Then we make you disappear, you say, like me. That becomes your mission. You lead them deeper into the woods, to a glade hidden by dense undergrowth. There, you help them build a stronger shelter, show them which plants sting and which soothe. You even teach them Jerusha's trick for masking footprints, dragging a pine branch behind you as you walk. They listen with desperate gratitude. Where did you learn all this? Kayim asks one day, shaking his head. You shrugged. From someone who thought people were dangerous. He smiles faintly. She wasn't wrong. That night, as you sit by the faintest hint of fire, you catch your reflection in a metal cup they've given you. Your face looks older, harder. You realize you've started talking again, joking even small things, but they feel enormous. Astera laughs when you pretend to scold a squirrel for stealing nuts, and Kayam teases you for never smiling. Smiling wastes energy, you reply solemnly, and calories. It's a small joke, but it's yours, the first in years. For a brief time, it feels almost peaceful. The forest hums with early spring, rivers thawing, shoots unfurling. You've created a fragile oasis in a world gone mad. But deep down, you know peace is a visitor here, not a resident. One morning, you wake to find Kayam gone. His footprints lead away from camp, straight toward the western edge of the Forest Award civilization. Astera paces, panic fluttering in her chest. He said he was going for food, she whispers. But he's been gone too long. You stare into the distance, where the forest thins and the light turns harsh. The world beyond the trees has found you again. And somewhere, faint but unmistakable, comes that same metallic rumble you heard long ago. Trains, maybe, or ghosts of them. The forest shivers. So do you. The air feels different, now charged, almost metallic, as though the forest itself is holding its breath. You and Astera sit in silence, staring at the place where Kayam's footprints vanish into the mist. Every sound seems amplified, the snap of a twig, the distant croak of a raven, the sighing breath of trees that have witnessed too many secrets. You want to believe he'll come back. You tell Astera he knows the way. The forest remembers. But even as you say it, you hear how hollow it sounds. Jerusha's voice murmurs in your head. People who leave rarely return. The forest only keeps those who listen. You wait for 2 days. On the third, you can't stand it anymore. You pack a small pouch knife, flint, dried mushrooms, tell Astera to stay hidden. If I don't return by the third night, you say, go east, follow the moss on the trees. She nods, though fear tightens her lips. Then you go. You move fast and quiet, weaving through underbrush, scanning for signs, bent twigs, broken ferns, footprints pressed into damp earth. You find his trail. Easily he's slower, heavier, not trained for stealth. But soon, new tracks overlap his. Multiple boots, organized, soldiers. The sight makes your stomach drop. Historians still argue whether German patrols ever reached this deep into the WWII forest during the early war years. But your eyes don't care for debate. You see what's in front of you. Crushed grass, cigarette butts, the faint gleam of something metallic half buried in the dirt. A bullet casing. You crouch, low ears straining. Somewhere ahead, a crow calls 3 times. Jerusha always said that meant death nearby. You hope she was wrong about that, just this once. After an hour, you find him. Khayyim's body lies partly covered in leaves, as if the forest tried to reclaim him before your eyes could. You kneel beside him, trembling. His eyes are open, staring up at the gray sky. You close them gently and whisper a word you don't know the meaning of, something Astera used to say at night, soft as prayer. You bury him the way Jerusha taught you, with quiet reverence. No fire, no stone marker, just 3 branches crossed into a star. Then you sit beside the grave until dusk bleeds across the sky. You think of all the stories he told, Yutha trains, the villages, the endless fear, and you realize this war is not just outside the forest. It's creeping in, root by root. When you return to camp, Astera knows before you speak. Her shoulders sag, her eyes emptying like wells gone dry. You don't try to comfort her. There's nothing to say. Instead, you hand her a piece of bark carved with symbols, directions to the east, to safety, to rivers that might lead her out. She looks at you with something between gratitude and disbelief. You're coming with me, she says. You shake your head. The forest still needs me. She laughs bitterly. The forest doesn't care who lives or dies. You want to argue, but deep down, you're not sure she's wrong. You've built your whole life on the idea that this place protects you, but maybe it's just indifferent. Still, it's all you know. You can't leave. Astera goes at dawn. You watch her fade into the trees until she's nothing but a memory of movement. You stand there a long time, feeling the forest fold back around you, closing the gap she left. Alone again, except this time, the silence hurts. Over the following weeks, the war becomes impossible to ignore. You hear planes overhead, distant gunfire, the muffled thunder of tanks. The forest trembles under their echoes. You start finding strange things scattered in the undergrowth, buttons, ration tins, once even a blood-stained letter written in German. You can't read it all, but the words Poland and Judon leap out like ghosts. And then the refugees come. Not just 1 or 2, this time dozens, stumbling through the trees, clutching children, whispering prayers. You watch them from a distance at first, uncertain. But when you see a boy no older than 10 collapse from hunger, you can't stay hidden. You step forward, hands raised. Follow me, you say quietly. They stare at you, this barefoot woman who moves like a deer, who smells of earth and pine resin. One man, his voice rough with disbelief, asks, "Are you real?" You smile faintly. That depends on who's asking. The group follows you deeper into the forest. You lead them to a small hollow by a stream, where the trees grow thick enough to hide the smoke from a small fire. They huddle together, whispering in Yiddish, while you start gathering food. It feels strange after years of solitude to move among people again. Their fear hums like static in the air. You teach them the basics Jerusha taught you: how to dig for water-rich roots, how to make pine needle tea, how to use sap as glue. They listen like disciples. A woman named Hannah calls you Yona of the trees. It's half joke, half myth, already. At night, you sit with them by the faint fire, sharing stories. They talk about ghettos, deportations, the impossibility of return. You don't know half the names they mention: Warsaw, Minsk, Lublin, but each one lands like a stone in your chest. One man swears he saw people vanish into thin air, as if swallowed by smoke. Another insists angels walk the forests now, disguised as humans. Maybe one of them found us, he says, looking at you. You almost laugh. Angels don't have dirt under their nails. But still, when the wind shifts and carries the scent of lilacs from some distant field, you allow yourself to believe just for a heartbeat that maybe Jerusha was right. Maybe the forest does choose who survives. Historians will later argue whether these hidden forest communities, known as the Forest Jews, were miracles of endurance or simple acts of desperate survival. Either way, tonight, under a canopy of whispering trees, you're no longer alone. You look around at the flickering faces, fragile yet defiant, and you feel it again, that strange pull between two worlds. You were stolen from humanity, yet here you are, saving it, piece by piece. The night grows colder. You pull your cloak tighter, eyes on the distant stars. Somewhere beyond the trees, the world burns, but here, for a moment, there's life, and laughter, and the faint, impossible sound of hope. You wake before dawn to the soft rhythm of rain filtering through pine needles. The camp is still a quilt of sleeping bodies, wrapped in damp blankets and exhaustion. The fire has gone out, leaving only the ghost of smoke. You move quietly among them, checking each shelter, each fragile attempt at permanence in a world that's forgotten the word. You've led people into hiding before, but never this many. The forest, once your private sanctuary, now breathes differently. It holds new scent soap sweat, the faint salt of tears. You catch yourself listening not for predators, but for heartbeats. It's disorienting, this return to humanity. Jerusha would have scowled and muttered that noise attracts death, but you find the sound oddly comforting. You begin the morning's ritual, gathering food, checking traps, teaching the children how to move without leaving tracks. One boy, Levi, insists on carrying a stick shaped like a sword. For the Nazis, he says proudly. You raise an eyebrow. You'll poke your eye out before you poke one of them. He grins, gap-toothed and fearless. There's humor, even here, thin, brittle, but alive. When the rain stops, you lead a small group out to forage. You show them how to identify edible fungi. If it glows at night, don't eat it, and how to test roots for bitterness. One man, Jacob, points to a vine coiled around a tree and asks, "What's that?" You smile. Nature's version of barbed wire. Stay clear. He laughs weakly, and for a heartbeat, the forest feels lighter. But there's always the undercurrent of danger. You keep glancing over your shoulder, half expecting to see soldiers emerge from the mist. You've learned to read silence like a map. When the birds go quiet, you stop breathing. That evening, while the others rest, you sit by the stream, sharpening your knife. The reflection in the blade startles you. It's your mother's face, or at least the mother you imagine. High cheekbones, serious eyes, hair that's both wild and weary. You tilt the blade, and the illusion shatters. You're still Yona the girl, who never belonged anywhere but here. Astera's words echo. The forest doesn't care who lives or dies. You wonder if she made it out. You wonder if anyone ever truly does. The refugees have started calling you the Guardian. It's strange, because you don't feel powerful. You feel like a bridge half creature, half myth, barely holding together. Yet when a woman named Miriam collapses with fever, everyone looks to you. You remember Jerish's remedies, bark tea, poultices of crushed fern, honey as antiseptic. You brew what you can, whispering under your breath as if she might guide your hands. It works, or maybe the forest does. Either way, Miriam survives. Word spreads through the group, turning you into something larger than life. You're not sure whether to laugh or hide. Historians still argue whether forest healers like you were real or romanticized, whether such women existed at all or were inventions of folklore. But here, under dripping leaves, your reality doesn't care for academic debate. The fever breaks, the child breathes, and that's miracle enough. One night, while the camp sleeps, you hear distant, singing soft, male voices carried by wind. It's a German patrol, you think at first, but the melody is slow, mournful. You creep closer, heart pounding. Through the trees, you see 3 men around a small fire, uniforms blackened by mud. They're not soldiers, they're deserters. One is crying quietly, muttering a name. Another drinks from a flask and stares at the flames like they hold confession. You stay hidden, but you can't look away. It's the first time you've seen the enemy up close, not faceless, not monstrous, just human, exhausted, lost, afraid. One of them pulls something from his Picatta photograph. He kisses it before tucking it back. You back away silently, shaken. Jerusha taught you to see humans as threats, but now you're not sure. Maybe the forest doesn't divide good and evil, it just absorbs whoever wanders in. When you return to camp, Levi is awake, poking the ashes of the fire. Why do they hate us? He asks, his voice small. You crouch beside him, unsure how to answer. Some people fear what they don't understand, you say, finally. And fear turns to fire. He looks at you solemnly, but fire dies. You smile faintly, if you know how to smother it. The following days blur into a rhythm of survival. You lead hunting parties, tend to wounds, and relocate the camp deeper into the forest. You discover a natural cave hidden by vines, perfect for hiding when soldiers patrol too close. It smells of damp stone and ancient secrets. Inside, carved faintly into the rock, are symbols, circles, stars, and a single word you can't decipher. You trace it with your fingers, wondering who left it there. Historians might later call it coincidence, but to you, it feels like a message, a promise that others have survived here before. You decide to turn the cave into your new refuge. Over the next week, you and the others reinforce the entrance with branches, building false walls that look like thickets from the outside. The work gives everyone purpose, a fragile sense of control. One evening, as twilight spills through the trees, Hannah hums an old lullaby while stirring soup. The sound drifts through camp, gentle and haunting. You remember Jerish's voice, again rough, off-key, but steady. You realize you miss her. You even miss her scolding. The forest hums back, a low whisper through the pines. Maybe it's just wind. Or maybe the trees are singing, too. And for a moment, Amid the hunger and fear, you feel something extraordinary, belonging. It doesn't last long, because one morning you wake to find smoke rising in the distance, thin at first, then thick, black, spreading across the horizon. The forest smells wrong, burnt. You climb a pine for a better view and see it. Flames devouring the trees miles away, smoke pillars clawing the sky. Someone's found them. You drop to the ground, heart hammering. Pack everything, you shout. We move now. The refugees scramble, panic erupting. Children cry, adults stumble. You grab as many as you can, guiding them into the undergrowth. The fire crackles somewhere behind, a hungry beast roaring closer. You've always trusted the forest to protect you, but now, for the first time, it feels alive in the worst possible way, furious, consuming, unstoppable. As you lead them deeper into the unknown, you whisper the same word Jerusha used when she carried you all those years ago, Bezbay safety, even though, right now, it feels like the most fragile word in the world. You push through the thick undergrowth, branches clawing at your arms, smoke nipping at your heels. The air tastes like ash. Behind you, the refugees stumble and cough, clutching children, bags, and the tatters of what's left of their courage. You can feel the heat rising, a pulsing wall of fire devouring everything in its path. You turn back once. Flames bloom like a living thing, licking the treetops, sending sparks spiraling into the sky. The forest, your lifelong protector, now burns like a betrayed god. You guide the group downhill toward a marshy ravine you've scouted before. The ground there is wet and the canopy thick enough to slow the blaze. The smell of peat and decay grows stronger as you near Eton, unpleasant blessing. Stay low, you whisper, and don't panic. Levi stumbles into a puddle and yelps, splashing mud on your legs. You shoot him a glare, but can't help the small laugh that slips out. Congratulations, you say dryly. You've just invented camouflage. Even now, humor threads through the terraces, the one thing that reminds everyone they're still alive. When the fire finally passes, it leaves behind a new kind of silence. The trees hiss and crackle, their trunks steaming. The air feels hollow, stripped of life. You move through the smoke like ghosts, searching for survivors. That night, you find a clearing untouched by the flames and collapse there. Some cry, some pray. You just stare at the stars through the haze. They look different, further away, as if the smoke has pushed the heavens back. Later, Jacob sits beside you, his beard singed at the ends. You saved us, he says quietly. You shake your head. The marsh did. He studies you for a moment. Still, we wouldn't have made it without you. You don't respond. You're too busy tracing the edge of the horizon, wondering how far the destruction goes. In the following days, the group regroups and begins to rebuild again, new shelters, new routines, same dread. You've learned that survival is mostly repetition. Find water, hide footprints, stay silent, repeat until history forgets you existed. But even as they adjust, something in you shifts. You begin to see the forest not as a single being, but as a mosaic of contradictions, burned and blooming, cruel and kind. While searching for fresh roots one morning, you stumble upon a tiny stone structure buried under vines. It looks like the remnants of an old chapel, just a few walls and a moss-covered altar. On the stone, you find a carved cross, half-raised by time. You run your fingers over the grooves, cold and rough. Historians still argue whether chapels like these were built by early hermits or by refugees from even older wars. you murmur to yourself. Either way, the idea feels familiar. People always running, always hiding, always building sanctuaries where they're least expected. You gather the group and decide to make this place your new camp. You call it Sanctuary Hollow, though the name feels almost sarcastic. That evening, Hannah begins humming again, her voice soft against the rustling leaves. Someone joins in, then another. Before long, the clearing fills with quiet harmony music threading through ruin. You lean back, eyes half closed, and let it wash over you. The melody isn't just for comfort, it's defiance. The Nazis burn villages, but here, deep in the woods, people sing. It's almost enough to make you believe in something again, almost. Because a week later, you find footprints that don't belong. They're deep, wide, and spaced like those of soldiers. You crouch beside them, heart sinking. They head straight toward Sanctuary Hollow. You move fast, silent, every sense sharpened. As you follow the trail, you catch a flicker of movement in the trees, a figure, tall, carrying a rifle. You duck behind a stump and peer closer. The man wears a tattered uniform, but not German polish. He's thin, bearded, eyes sunken but alert. When he spots you, he freezes. Then slowly, he raises his empty hand. "Don't shoot," he says in a rasping whisper. You step out, knife ready. "Who are you?" He hesitates. "A soldier, or what's left of one." His polish is rough but real. "Name's Dodd. I've been hiding since my unit was ambushed near Nailaboki." You study him carefully, searching for deceit, but his eyes tired, haunted mirror your own back at camp. The others are wary. A man with a gun, even a broken one, is both a blessing and a curse. Dodd offers to help guard the camp, to teach the older boys how to handle weapons. You agree, reluctantly. Over time, his presence changes the rhythm of the group. He tells stories by the fire about Warsaw before the war, about music, about love letters that never got sent. Sometimes you catch yourself smiling, which feels almost scandalous. One night, as you patrol the edge of camp, he joins you. "You've been out here since you were a child?" he asks. You nod, and you never wanted to leave. You shrug. "Where would I go? The world out there doesn't want me." He looks around at the forest, the shadows shifting like slow breath. "Maybe it's not about where you go. Maybe it's who walks beside you." You pretend you didn't hear that, but your chest tightens anyway. The next morning, you wake to birdsong, the first in weeks. A good omen, maybe. You catch sight of Levi chasing a squirrel and yelling something about starting a forest army. You laugh, realizing how absurdly hopeful children can be, even when the world burns. Still, hope is contagious. You spend the next few days fortifying the camp with Dawood's help, building traps and lookout points. He's resourceful, calm, and, annoyingly, knows how to make people laugh, even when food is scarce. One afternoon, while gathering wood, you stumble upon an old wooden crate beneath a fallen tree. Inside, rusted tools, a cracked compass, and a small metal locket. Inside the locket is a faded photo of a young woman. You show it to Dodd. You stare at him. "Here, in this forest." He nods slowly. "She disappeared years ago, before the war." The forest seems to close in around you, the air heavy with ghosts. "Then maybe," you whisper, "the forest has been collecting lost souls longer than any of us knew." That night, you dream of fire and faces Jerish's, Dawded's sisters, your own reflected in the stream. All merging, dissolving, returning to the earth. You wake with one thought echoing through your head. No one really vanishes. The forest just keeps them for itself. And as dawn breaks over Sanctuary Hollow, the mist curls like smoke around the trees, and you feel something shift inside you, not fear this time, but understanding. The forest takes, but it also keeps. The next few weeks unfold in a rhythm that feels almost like peace. You rise before sunrise, the mist clinging to your hair, the forest still half asleep around you. The air smells of pine and damp earth, familiar, grounding. The group has grown quieter, more practiced in the art of invisibility. Voices are whispers, fires are buried deep in the soil, even laughter feels like contraband. You spend mornings teaching the children how to track animals and identify edible plants. Levi is your most eager student, still carrying his crooked wooden sword, still convinced he's going to save the world. You let him believe it. Sometimes belief is the only thing keeping anyone alive. Hannah, who once trembled at every rustle, now walks barefoot without a sound. Jacob's cough has faded. Even the smallest children have learned to hold their breath when they hear planes overhead. You find yourself watching them with something dangerously close to pride. Then, one morning, Dodd returns from scouting with a grim face. German patrols are moving north again, he says. They're burning everything they find. You nod, jaw tight. We'll move deeper, toward the eastern ridge. He hesitates. That's Russian territory. You meet his gaze. Then maybe it's time we see if the other monsters are kinder. He huffs, a small laugh, bitter but real. You know, historians still argue whether the eastern forest line was truly a safe zone. Depends on who you ask or who survived to tell it. That line sticks with you as you pack. Who survived to tell it? Maybe no one really does. You lead the group at dawn, following a narrow game trail along a frozen stream. The journey is brutal. Snow has started to fall, and the wind cuts through every layer of cloth. Food runs low, tempers fray. Hannah snaps at Jacob over a stolen turnip, and you have to remind them both that starving together is still better than dying alone. By the third day, morale sinks like a stone. The children cry from exhaustion, and Dodd looks at you as if expecting answers you don't have. You remember Jerish's words, the forest gives, but only when it's asked the right way. So you stop walking. You drop to your knees, press your palms into the cold ground, and whisper a single word, please. It's ridiculous, you know. But a few hours later, you stumble upon an abandoned hunter's cabin, hidden beneath fallen branches. The roof sags, the walls lean, but inside there's a miracle: tools, blankets, and half a sack of potatoes, frozen solid. Levi declares it a magic hut. You don't correct him. Magic is just luck dressed up for storytelling anyway. That night, for the first time in months, the group sleeps indoors. The wind howls outside, but the walls, thin as they are, muffle the sound. You sit by the cracked window, knife in hand, watching snow drift across the moonlight. Dodd joins you quietly, offering half a potato cooked over embers. Not exactly a feast, he says. It's better than bark soup, he chuckles. You're hard to impress, you shrugged. The forest set the bar low. For a moment, neither of you speak. The silence is comfortable, like the pause between heartbeats. Then he says, I've been thinking, when this is over, if it ever ends, what will you do? You almost laugh. Over. You think the world just stops being cruel one morning. He smiles faintly. Maybe not. But maybe we can decide what comes next. You look away, afraid he'll see the flicker of longing you've been ignoring. The idea of a next feels too fragile to hold. Still, that night you dream of a house at the forest's edge, a small garden, a blue sky untouched by smoke. And when you wake, for a moment, you think you can smell bread. The next few days bring a deceptive calm. You find animal tracks nearby, and Dawood manages to trap a hare. Everyone eats. You laugh more than you should. It feels dangerous, that laughter, like tempting fate. Then fate, predictably, answers. It happens just after dawn. You're returning from fetching water when you hear shouting, low, guttural, foreign, Russian, not German. You freeze. 2 soldiers emerge from the trees, rifles slung casually. Their uniforms are muddied, their eyes glassy. One sees you and grins. Devushka, he calls. What are you doing here alone? You don't respond. You take a step back, slow and deliberate. Dodd appears behind you, gun drawn. The soldiers stiffen. One raises his hands, smirking. No need for that. We're not Nazis. No, Dodd says quietly. But you're not saints either. The second soldier spits into the snow. You hide Jews here. You can feel the air tighten, ready to snap. Dodd's finger twitches on the trigger. Then Levi shouts from the cabin, Yona, the soup is ready. The soldiers glance toward the sound, and in that heartbeat, you act, grabbing Dawood's arm, dragging him down behind a fallen log. The first bullet whistles past your ear. Chaos erupts. The refugees scatter, screams swallowed by the trees. You shout for them to run east, toward the ridge. Dodd fires once, twice, then grabs your hand. Move. You sprint through snow and brush, lungs burning, branches whipping your face. Behind you, the cabin catches fire. Second home turned to ash again. When you finally stop, the world is white and silent, except for your ragged breathing. Dodd is bleeding from his shoulder. You rip a strip from your coat and press it against the wound. He grimaces but doesn't complain. They found us, he mutters. Even here, you nod. The forest can't hide us forever. He looks at you, eyes clouded with pain, but also something softer. Then we don't hide, we survive. You hold his gaze for a long time, the snow falling between you like quiet punctuation. Later, when you lead what's left of your group deeper into the trees, you feel the weight of every lost place, the old camp, the chapel, the burned hut, all swallowed by the same endless forest. And yet, as night falls, you light a small fire, just one, a single flicker in a sea of shadows. Because even now, even after everything, you refuse to let the dark win. By morning, the fire has burned down to embers. The survivors huddle around it, faces hollow but eyes alert. You count them silently, 15 left out of more than 40. Every number feels like a loss you can't bury. Dawood's wound has stopped bleeding, but infection is a lurking shadow. You mix crushed moss and honey into a makeshift salve, wrapping his shoulder with steady hands. He winces, but manages a crooked smile. You'd make a decent nurse, he says. You smirk. You'd make a decent patient if you stopped trying to talk. He chuckles weakly. Deal. It's strange, this fragile normalcy. You find yourself craving it even as danger presses close again. Survival isn't just about food or shelter anymore, it's about keeping your mind from unraveling. You start small rituals, counting tree rings, tracing constellations through gaps in the canopy, telling Levi bedtime stories about magical foxes that outsmart soldiers. He insists the foxes are real. You don't argue. As days blend into weeks, you guide the group eastward. The snow deepens, turning the forest into a monochrome labyrinth. You ration food, forcing everyone to eat bark tea and roasted roots. No one complains anymore. Silence has become your shared language. Then, one bitter morning, you find footprints, again fresh, deep, and wrong. These are boots, military issue. You follow them for a short distance until you hear voices ahead. You signal for silence, creeping forward through the trees. In a clearing, a small band of men huddles around a fire. Their uniforms are mismatched, their rifles old. You recognize them before they even speak. Partisans, the Polish resistance. You step out slowly, hands raised. Don't shoot, you call in Polish. We're not the enemy. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a fur cap, stands, aiming his rifle your way. Then what are you? People trying to stay alive. He studies you for a long moment before lowering his gun. Name Yona. His brow furrows. The wild girl from the western woods. You blink. You've heard of me. He smirks. Everyone's heard of you. Some say you eat soldiers for breakfast. You roll your eyes, only when they're undercooked. He laughs a sound so rare, you almost don't recognize it. Fair enough. I'm Marek. He nods toward his group. You and yours can join us if you can pull your weight. You hesitate. You've avoided groups like this for a reason. Violence breeds faster than moss. But the people behind you need warmth, food, protection. So you nod. We'll help. Life with the partisans is chaos, wrapped in discipline. They move constantly, striking supply lines and vanishing into the forest. You watch Dodd regain strength, his soldiers' instincts resurfacing. He trains with Marek's men, teaching them stealth and patience. You, meanwhile, become their guide, the forest's translator. You show them where to find wild garlic, how to disguise camps with natural camouflage, how to read wind direction to avoid leaving scent trails for dogs. One night, Marek calls you his witch of the woods. You grin. I prefer consultant. But as the group grows bolder, raids turn bloodier. The forest echoes with gunfire more often now, and you feel the old dread creeping back, the realization that no one truly hides forever. Historians still argue whether the forest partisans were saviors or scavengers, heroes or opportunists. The truth, like everything here, lies somewhere between myth and mud. One night, you wake two voices outside the camp, raised angry. Dodd and Marek stand face to face. She's risking everything, keeping civilians here, Marek snaps. We can't fight and feed children at the same time. Dodd steps closer, jaw tight. Without her, you'd all be dead. Marek's eyes flick toward you. Then maybe she's the one who should lead. Silence, the kind that cuts. You step forward before Dodd can speak. No one leads the forest, you say softly. It leads us. And right now, it's telling me to move. Marek's expression softens slightly. You'd leave. You nod. The forest doesn't keep what it can't protect. By dawn, you're gone. Again 15 souls slipping through trees like ghosts. Marek doesn't try to stop you. That day, the sky clears, and sunlight filters through the canopy for the first time in weeks. It feels strange, too bright, too gentle. Levi runs ahead, his laughter scattering through the pines. It's warm, he shouts, throwing off his coat. You can't help but smile. Don't get too excited, you call. Spring's just pretending. But as the snow melts, the forest changes. Buds appear on branches. Tiny shoots break through the frost. Life insists on returning, even after so much death. One afternoon, while scouting for food, you come across something that stops you cold. A German plane, crashed and half buried in moss. The wreckage is twisted, its insignia faded, but inside you find a pilot's logbook, water-stained but legible. You flip through the pages, frowning. It's not just flight notes, it's personal entries, letters, sketches, even a pressed flower. You read one line aloud. She said the forest was alive. I laughed. I'm not laughing now. You close the book and sit in silence. The irony, too heavy to ignore. The forest doesn't pick sides. It just consumes everything that enters. That night, you share the story with Dord. He listens quietly, then says, maybe that's why it's still standing. It doesn't care who wins. You nod slowly. Maybe that's the only way anything survives. The next day, as you cross a shallow stream, you spot something glittering beneath the water, an old metal pendant shaped like a star. You fish it out, the cold biting your fingers. It's a Star of David, simple and tarnished. You hold it tight for a long moment before slipping it into your pocket. A reminder of everyone who vanished without leaving a trace. That night, the group gathers around a small fire. You tell stories, again not of war or loss, but of the old legends Jerusha used to whisper, about spirits that guide travelers home, about trees that remember names. The children listen, eyes wide. Even the adults lean closer. For the first time in a long while, you hear laughter that doesn't sound borrowed. And as you gaze into the fire, you think maybe, just maybe, the forest hasn't finished teaching you yet. The forest shifts again, almost imperceptibly, as spring deepens. The air softens, birds return, and the sharp scent of thawed earth fills every breath. After months of living inside winter's clenched fist, the sudden tenderness feels unreal. You almost expect it to vanish if you blink too long. You and the others move with the season, building a new camp beside a wide stream. The water sparkles in sunlight, and the sound of it a steady hush feels like the first lullaby you've heard in years. For the first time since the fire, people sleep without clutching their belongings. Life, fragile but stubborn, resumes its rhythm. Levi builds a slingshot and insists on calling himself Captain of Squirrels. Hannah teases him mercilessly. Dodd, his shoulder nearly healed, spends his days repairing tools, teaching others to make traps that don't maim. And you, as always, watch over everything like a reluctant guardian spirit. Sometimes you wonder what Jerusha would think if she saw you now leading a small, mismatched family through a war you never chose. You imagine her muttering, "You're getting soft, girl," even as her eyes betrayed pride. One morning, while gathering herbs near the stream, you find something strange. A footprint, small, barefoot, recent. You follow it upstream until it disappears into moss. Then you see movement between the trees, a flash of pale fabric, a whisper of motion. Someone's watching you. You freeze, hand on your knife. Who's there? No answer, only the sound of wind through leaves. You take a cautious step forward, then another. A girl emerges from the shadows, maybe 12. Her hair tangled, her face smudged with dirt. She looks like a ghost, but a living one. You lower your knife. "You're safe," you say gently. "Come out." She hesitates, then steps closer. "Are you the witch?" You blink. "Excuse me." The other said, "There's a woman in the woods who talks to trees. They said you steal children." You laugh softly. "Steal them? No. I collect strays." Her lips twitch like she wants to smile, but forgot how my parents are gone. Of course they are. Everyone's parents are gone. You bring her back to camp. Her name is Clara. She doesn't talk much, but she clings to Levi like they've known each other forever. The group accepts her easily. One more lost soul doesn't make much difference anymore. That night, as you watch her sleep, you realize something unsettling. She reminds you of yourself. Not the grown version hardened by survival, but the barefoot child, Jerusha, plucked from the world. The symmetry feels cruelly poetic. Historians still argue whether orphaned children like Clara ever truly survived the forests, or if their stories were embellished afterward to soothe collective guilt. But you don't need historians. You've lived the proof. A few weeks later, Dodd approaches you with news. Marek's group sent a messenger. He says, "The Red Army is pushing west. The Germans are retreating." You narrow your eyes, so it's over. He shakes his head. Wars don't end, they just change uniforms. You both fall silent, staring into the fire. The idea of peace feels too distant, too hypothetical to celebrate. Still, the rumors ripple through camp. Hope sprouts cautiously, like grass after frost. People begin to whisper about leaving the forest, about returning to cities that might no longer exist. Hannah dreams of Krakow. Jacob says he'll find his brother. Even Levi talks about becoming a teacher so kids can learn to fight without guns. But when Dodd asks what you'll do, you have no answer. The forest is all you've ever known. The thought of leaving it feels like cutting out a part of your own body. That night, you wander away from camp, following the stream to a quiet glade. The moon hangs low, painting everything silver. You kneel, scoop cold water into your hands, and whisper, "What now?" The forest doesn't answer. Of course, it never does. But a soft wind stirs the leaves, and for a moment, you imagine Jerusha's voice in it. You already know, girl. The next day, you wake to shouting. Dodd runs toward you, his face pale. "They found us." You grab your pack and sprint toward camp. Smoke rises through the trees again. A small detachment of German soldiers, stragglers, desperate or cruel, have stumbled upon your people. Gunfire cracks through the air. You shout for the children to hide, but chaos swallows your voice. Hannah drags Clara into a hollow log, while Levi clutches his slingshot like it's a rifle. Dodd returns fire, covering the group's retreat. You grab a fallen branch and set it alight from the burning tents. The forest's old magic. You think grimly fire for fire. You hurl the torch into a pile of dry brush. Flames leap, spreading fast. The soldiers shout, coughing, blinded by smoke. You seize Dawood's arm. "Go." He hesitates. "What about you?" "I'll find you." It's a lie, and you both know it. You turn and run in the opposite direction, drawing the soldiers away. Bullets hiss past your ears, thudding into bark. You dive behind a tree, heart hammering. The smoke thickens, your eyes sting. You crawl, dragging yourself through the roots until the noise fades. When you finally stop, you can't tell how long you've been running. The forest around you is unrecognizable, half burned, half blooming. You collapse beside a fallen oak, gasping for air. Above you, the sky shifts from orange to black. Somewhere far behind, the last echoes of gunfire die out. You don't know who survived. You don't even know if you will. But you feel the forest's pulse beneath you steady, ancient, alive. You close your eyes and whisper, "Keep them safe." And for the first time since you were a child, you think maybe the forest listens. Hours later, when you finally open your eyes, dawn has returned. The smoke is gone, and sunlight filters through the trees like forgiveness. You push yourself up, aching but alive, and follow the faint trail of footprints leading east. You don't know where they'll end, but they exist. That's enough. As you walk, you glance back once. The forest stretches endlessly behind you, a tapestry of green and ash. You smile faintly. You win, you whisper. Again. You walk all morning through the eastern forest, the ground soft beneath your boots, the air heavy with the scent of moss and damp leaves. Every sound feels magnified, the rustle of a squirrel, the distant croak of a frog, the wind brushing through the treetops. You almost laugh at how alert you've become, how the smallest noise can send your heart hammering. The group trails behind you, weary but alive. Clara clings to Hannah, her wide eyes absorbing everything. Levi keeps scanning the trees, slingshot ready, though you suspect he's forgotten the last time he saw a threat. Still, the energy of movement keeps fear at bay, at least for now. You pause at a stream, kneeling to fill your canteen. The water is icy and clear, and you catch your reflection, a pale, dirt-streaked face framed by tangled hair. You barely recognize the person staring back. The forest has changed you, carved survival and sorrow into every line. Dodd approaches, limping slightly but steady. How much further? He asks. You shrug. As far as the forest allows. East, always east. The march continues, shadows stretching long in the late afternoon sun. You find traces of life-wild berries, mushrooms, and even a few small animals. Each discovery feels miraculous, a fragile reminder that life persists even amid destruction. As evening falls, you make camp in a small hollow surrounded by tall pines. Fires are small, concealed. The group eats quietly, the crackle of embers and the occasional cough the only sounds. For the first time, you allow yourself a moment to breathe, to savor the fragile pulse of survival. That night, you lie awake, staring at the stars through a gap in the canopy. You think of Jerusha, of Qaim, of every person lost, every fire you faced. You wonder if the forest remembers them all, if it keeps their ghosts like seeds buried beneath roots. You hear Levi's soft breathing, Hannah humming a lullaby to Clara. Dodd sleeps near the edge of the fire, his hand brushing yours as if for comfort. And you, Yona, realize that despite everything, the fear, the loss, the endless flight louvre carved a fragile sanctuary here. Historians will argue about these forests, about the children and women who survived, about the whispered legends of a guardian of the woods. Some will call it myth, others miracle. But you know the truth. Survival is messy, imperfect, and filled with ghosts. It's quiet heroism stitched together by courage and stubbornness. The forest has tested you, burned you, and hidden you. It has taken and it has given. And now, as the first whispers of dawn brush against your face, you allow yourself a moment of hope. Not a bold, careless hope, just enough to breathe, to feel the pulse of life still beating beneath your feet. You close your eyes, listening to the soft chorus of leaves, water, and distant wildlife. The world is still dangerous, still uncertain, still cruel, but you've made it this far, and somehow that matters. The forest stretches endlessly around you, alive and eternal. And for tonight, the fire is almost out now, leaving only a faint glow that dances on the rough bark around your camp. You sit quietly, knees drawn close, listening to the gentle susurration of the forest. Every sound is softened, a lullaby composed by wind and water and the subtle stirrings of nocturnal life. You inhale deeply, filling your lungs with the sharp sweetness of pine, the earthy undertone of soil warmed by sunlight hours ago. The ache in your muscles eases slightly, and even the persistent tension in your chest loosens as if the forest itself is offering a moment of reprieve. Around you, the survivors lie scattered like fragile vessels, some breathing deeply in sleep, others murmuring faintly in dreams you cannot yet understand. Levi curls next to Hannah, his wooden sword abandoned for warmth and comfort. Clara nestles against her shoulder, small and trusting, unaware of the chaos and fire and fear that brought her here. Dodd leans against a tree, his shoulder still sore, eyes closed, exhaling a breath that speaks of relief and exhaustion alike. You allow yourself to drift in thought, tracing every echo of memory the people lost. The shelters burned, the miraculous escapes. The forest hums beneath and around you, a subtle rhythm that reminds you of the continuity of life. Even amid destruction, there is resilience. Even when hope seems fragile, it persists, threading through the earth, the leaves, and the hearts of those who remain. Your body softens against the forest floor, letting gravity cradle you. The worries and threats of the day recede like distant waves, leaving a quiet current of survival, endurance, and connection. You feel each heartbeat, each breath, as a small miracle. You remind yourself that the forest, in its vast, indifferent wisdom, has carried you this far and will continue to shelter those who listen. Outside, the stars glimmer faintly, peeking through the canopy, witnesses to every step, every struggle, every triumph. You close your eyes and let the forest's gentle symphony cradle you, knowing that for tonight, for this fleeting moment, safety and calm are yours. And when sleep finally comes, it carries you softly, one heartbeat at a time, into the quiet eternity of the woods.